Hi there, welcome to the Big Idea podcast, focused on food. Today we're going to be talking to a great company called Karana. Karana have made a range of products. Their first, though, is focused on plant-based dumplings and baos and other amazing foods. Their first markets are in Singapore and Hong Kong, and they're shortly bringing this product to the United States. So let's listen to Dan, have some conversations with him, and find out what's new and great and amazing about Karana. If you have questions or comments, please do post them below, subscribe, and enjoy the podcast. Thanks very much. Bye. All right, Dan from Karana. How are you, sir?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, very well. I also need to make sure I've got all my various bits and bobs recording so that we can turn this magical conversation into things for people. So, Dan, you're one of the co-founders of Karana. Why don't we give people a quick overview of what you guys do?
Sure. Well, we make meat from whole plants. So I think everyone who's watching this is probably pretty aware of the plant-based meat movement. Where we sit is really focusing on the ingredients we use, how they're sourced, how they're grown, what that impact is on everyone from the farmers and the communities where we're getting them to consumer health. But of course, at the end of the day, what we're doing is making it as delicious and accessible as possible. So we're starting with jackfruit as our main ingredient. There's a lot of reasons why we're focusing on that, but we're turning it into really interesting end products, starting with a pork that chefs can take in a lot of different directions, as well as some consumer products that are more convenience, ready to cook focused, starting with dumplings and dim sum.
Okay, so dumplings, dim sum, pork made from jackfruit. You didn't say burgers. How can you not say plant-based burgers?
Well, I mean, you could make a burger with our products. It's definitely doable, and some people are doing that. But we do look at the market, and we see a fair amount of saturation on the burger side, and certainly on the beef side. So we're very much sitting in that pork segment. Doesn't mean you can't have a pork burger, but what we want to do is, with chefs and food service, give a really blank canvas that can be made into anything. And for consumers, I think it's really about making this as turnkey as possible. So burgers are a good way to do that, but there's a huge world beyond burgers, and especially in a lot of the markets we're looking at. Now we are looking at the US, which is definitely a burger center, but there's a lot of other needs in the plant-based world. We need just more products, more variety, and more options. So we're very happy to be doing things beyond burgers.
So beyond burger. Oh, sorry, that sounded strangely.
Yes, it's with all the different names, right? It's very easy to get sucked into unintended puns. Sorry.
Okay, so dim sums, pork, etc. You are turning, as you say, to the US. Where is this currently? Where are you guys? Where have you been focused to date? How old a company are you?
So we're a Singapore-based company. We've been operating for about 3 years. We're born and bred in Singapore as a startup. We are in the market in Singapore and Hong Kong. We launched our products there earlier this year. And we will be looking at the US over the rest of this year. So we'll be focusing on those 3 markets and growing those for the immediate term. But yeah, we're very excited to be focusing on the opportunities both in Asia, as well as, there's obviously a very strong market demand in the US. I think there's huge opportunities all over the world, but we're very focused on, building our presence in a few key places and growing from there.
So given that you're selling this product right now in Singapore and in Hong Kong, it sounds like this product is as authentic as it gets.
We hope so. Look, we focus on giving chefs a platform that they can work with. For us, we see a huge opportunity in the APAC market, but there's also an opportunity in markets like the US, like we were talking about, outside of just the burgers, just the ground beef products that are out there, just to expand the range of what we have available in terms of ingredients, in terms of the end applications that those can be put towards. So, definitely authenticity is something we're going for, but ultimately we're about making really good food products that chefs are excited to work with, that consumers are excited to use. But a big part of that is localizing and making sure that it's something that fits into where there is local demand. So in Asia, that demand for pork products has definitely inspired a lot of what we do. But again, just looking at underserviced categories across the market is really what drives us.
Okay, so you talked about chefs. This isn't, by the sounds of it, this isn't going to be a product that I'm going to walk into a Walmart or another grocery store of some kind and see under packaging, or is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our first product line so we have in the market our food service product. So that's available through restaurants. We're in a number of restaurants in both Singapore and Hong Kong, and we'll be launching in a similar way in the US and the West Coast over the rest of this year. But we are definitely moving towards retail products, and our intention is very much for you to be able to walk into a store and see us on the shelf in the not too distant future. But the format that will probably look a little bit different to consumers than it would to a chef or a food service customer. So one of the things that we see is that people are really wanting to make the switch to plant-based, but at the end of the day, it's quite intimidating. I mean, these are new products, it's a new concept, so people are a bit risk averse when it comes to cooking and preparing food at home sometimes. So we want to make it as accessible, as convenient, as simple as possible for people to have a really good experience eating a wide range of plant-based options. So when we think about our consumer products, we're very focused on making it turnkey, making it convenient. So the format that retail consumers are likely to interact with our products are going to be in the form of a ready to cook. So starting with those dumplings, a frozen dumpling that will be very familiar to a lot of consumers, might be new to some, but should be a fairly simple product for people to try and not be worried about not having a good experience with it.
So step one, by the sounds of it, will be in restaurants. Step two may be or is likely to be the frozen dumpling in a grocery format. In terms of restaurants, what are we talking about here? Is it kind of quick serve, P.F. Chang style restaurants, or is it, individual Michelin star chef restaurants who are going to kind of lead the thought leadership around this particular category in terms of authentic Chinese style food?
Sure. Well, I mean, it can go into range. I mean, it works very, very well, and it's been designed around, being used in a lot of traditional Chinese, Singaporean, Peranakan. We work with a Michelin-starred Peranakan restaurant in Singapore. We've been working more on the premium side, the higher end side of the F&B sector to start, because there is a lot of benefit in working with really amazing chefs, working with restaurants where consumers have, awareness and a certain level of trust in that chef and what they're going to get. So that helps open the door, especially in a market like Singapore and Hong Kong, where it's a very food focused market. There's food is taken very seriously, and there's a lot of high expectations. So we want to, again, make sure that those first interactions with our product are, in a way that people are going to have an amazing experience. It's going to be through a chef that they trust. And that's also a great way for us to understand, the full range of what our products can do by working with chefs like that. But we work with a wide range of restaurants. We have some fast casual partners that we're working with in both Singapore and Hong Kong. We work with a brand called Grain Traders in Singapore that does really amazing grain bowls, is a very accessible place for people to get really good quality food. They have a restaurant in LA as well that we'll be looking at working with over here. So it's a range, but definitely the goal is to be making this as widely available as possible. So as we get into the market, looking at fast casual, QSR, institutional catering, these are all very high on our list as well. And especially now, the last year has been quite challenging in food service. So that's also been a bit limiting in terms of the types of restaurants, we've been focusing on. But as we start to come into a relative new sense of normalcy, or things start to normalize in some way, we're definitely seeing food service come back. And I think it will continue to rebound in various formats.
So let's very quickly just touch on the Michelin star chef you mentioned in Singapore, who's been using your product. Give us one example of a dish that they've created that has received good reception using Karana.
Sure. So that's Chef Malcolm at Candle Nut. I think anyone who's in Singapore is probably familiar. It's a really amazing restaurant, a beautiful setting. So he's done what's very cool is a no hyang. I hope I'm saying it right. I think I am. But it's a very traditional Chinese peranakan dish. So peranakan, if people aren't familiar, is sort of a Chinese Malaysian fusion cuisine. So very distinct to Singapore and parts of Malaysia, very unique food culture that brings together a lot of different flavors and elements. So a no hyang is a traditional dish that you would get in a lot of homes. It's something that you would grow up with your grandmother or family members making probably at home. So it's a dish that would be very familiar to a lot of people. And it's essentially, it's a ground pork roll, so you might equate it a little bit like a sausage, but with a lot of spice, a lot of flavor, a lot of different things happening. It might incorporate prawns into the traditional way. So this is made with our jackfruit, with mushrooms, but it's just a really delicious, interesting take on a very iconic traditional dish. So for me, I love seeing that sort of thing and seeing, how chefs are taking these very traditional, as you said, authentic flavors and just rethinking the baseline ingredients and how you can get a very similar outcome.
So whenever I've seen you guys at shows and events, there's always a line of people like queuing up to try your bows and to try your dumplings every single time. I'm guessing this chef you just mentioned might have had a very similar experience serving your product.
I hope so. I mean, the feedback has been very, very positive, but it's a whole range. I mean, that's, again, at that level, it's just a more limited, there's only so many seats and so much turnover at a restaurant like that. So we see similar or even higher volume at a place like Grain Traders, where, again, you can get to a much wider variety of customers. So it is going very well. The feedback is extremely good. And again, we just focus on making these ingredients as easy to make delicious as possible. And I think that's the real key, whether it's our own products where we're doing everything to it, or whether it's something that we're giving to chefs to work with. I mean, the end goal for us is that we focus very much on the quality of the ingredients that we use, which is key to all that. But really, we make the products in a way that we want them to be easy to make delicious. And I think that it speaks for itself with the results you've said.
So consumers love it. I know that for a fact. I've seen the happy faces and the smiling faces every time people try the product. How are the restaurants, grocery stores, those sorts of things? How are they responding? And what are you looking for in terms of moving into new markets? You mentioned the US would be. It is already on the horizon for you.
Yeah. Well, at this point, we're really focused on scale. And I mean, the world, is complicated and changing right now. So we're looking at markets where we have the biggest opportunity to scale quickly, because I think the need for not just our product, for a lot of plant-based products is never been higher. I mean, we see what's happening with our climate. We see the weather impacts. We see this across the entire sector. So we're really focused on the impact side of things and how we can scale up as quickly as possible. So we've taken the last year to really focus on improving our product offerings, improving our formulations, getting the product into a position where we can scale. So, I mean, the US market is just moving very, very quickly. So we're looking forward to getting into things here and really getting on as many plates and in front of as many consumers as possible.
So restaurants, grocery stores, have you already started having those conversations with restaurants and grocery in the US?
Yeah, we have. We're moving as quickly as we can. It's always a step by step, and somewhat painful process. But yes, I mean, the feedback is very, very promising. So we're going to be looking to accelerate both our food service rollout here. We have a few interesting conversations in the works, which hopefully we will be able to start sharing fairly soon. And then we will be pushing the retail side of things as quickly as we're able. So, I mean, that will start with our dumplings, and we're very much looking forward to getting those on shelves.
You say here, does that mean that your background is the US versus Singapore?
Well, I mean, I say here because I'm here right now, and I've been in a lot of different places over the last year. But I mean, here really for us, I think includes the markets we're operating in. So still growing and servicing Singapore and Hong Kong, and we may even be launching our retail products in those markets first, because in Singapore for us is our home market, it's our test market, it's where we launch, it's where we try a lot of things. So it's very likely that anything we do will have a Singapore launch phase first. We produce, I believe we're one of the first, if not the first, plant-based, certainly whole plant-based meat being produced in Singapore. So we're very proud of that. And Singapore is really an amazing ecosystem and market to test products. But when we look at scale, Singapore is obviously limited as a market.
How many people there now?
In our team or in population?
In Singapore.
Singapore is about 5.5 million people.
So it's a kind of a small, really reasonable sized city sort of thing.
It is. And it's it has some advantages to that. So it's very concentrated. There is a lot of awareness. There's a lot of sophistication around food and flavors. But there's also, that means, as I said before, very high standards. So it keeps us to a fairly high standard, which I think is good. But of course, it's then limited where you can go. I mean, the markets immediately bordering Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia, which are complicated markets to operate in. So we look at Hong Kong as a logical next expansion point. But from our base in Singapore and Hong Kong, it gives us a good visibility and opportunity to look at where all the interesting developments are happening across the APAC region. So obviously, China is a big opportunity. There's a lot of interesting markets, all throughout the region that we're looking at, which we can, I think, get a lot of good insights being based in Singapore. So there's a lot of advantage that we get from focusing there. But as we look to scale these days, I think everything is localizing more. And so being present physically in a few different markets does give us a lot of on the ground insight and helps a lot with our end formulation and adapting products specifically for those markets.
I mean, given you're already in Singapore and Hong Kong, why is US the next logical step versus China?
It's still the biggest market for plant-based. I mean, the level of sophistication, the products here it's growing so fast. It's developing so quickly. I would say it's certainly more saturated, more competitive as well, but that's not a bad thing at this stage. It sort of forces you to be better and to up your game. And I mean, we believe where our products sit, we are quite differentiated in the ingredients we choose, how we formulate and bring our products to market. And I think there's a clear demand for that. A lot of people have been, getting very comfortable with the existing range of products over the last few years and are now looking for sort of this next generation of products that fit higher standards around health, around the sourcing story, around the ingredient list and labels. So that's very much hitting a sweet spot for us here. And I think that will certainly come and develop in Asia, but I think it's still a little bit early. And just these days, with the need to be present and on the ground to really effectively launch a market. I mean, China is not an easy market to launch a product. So while we see the opportunity, I think we want to, cut our teeth a little bit in a scale-up market where we see an immediate, again, a bad pun, low-hanging fruit opportunity. And then, of course, China is very much on our radar and a market that we will continue to look at as we grow. But taking on China requires significant volume. It requires a lot of planning and execution that will be difficult to manage, largely remotely at this point.
I think that's one of the things I've always loved about you guys. You start very much with great taste and authenticity, and you're very focused on the consumer experience. But you're also very, very cognizant of where you're sourcing your ingredients from, clean label, low impact sustainability. Not something the plant-based category has always managed to achieve. It's kind of squaring the circle. So just dig into that very quickly. How are you guys covering that? How are you? Sorry for if anyone hears a little bit of feedback, I apologize. But how are you guys squaring that circle of clean label?
Yeah, I mean, it really comes down for us. It's quite simple. We're a good food company. We're about good food. And this is the question we ask anyone who's interviewing with us. This is something that comes up repeatedly in our internal discussions. It's like, what does good food mean to us? And good food is not just about, moving away from animal agriculture. That's a big part of it, but it's industrialization of food in general. And it's about, looking holistically at what is the impact of this, who grows it, what does it do to my body, to our family's bodies, what is the best format to bring these types of products to market where people will connect to it in a different way. So we look very holistically at everything from the farmer. I mean, I think a lot of times we're very disconnected from the food we eat in a lot of ways, whether it's plant-based, meat. We like the clean, sterilized chicken breast. We don't like to think about the chicken and the life of the chicken and the people caring for that chicken or not caring for that chicken, as it often is. And it's the same with an ingredient like, soy. We don't want to think about how a lot of these commodity ingredients are grown, but it's so important. The quality of life for farmers, the income opportunities for them, soil health. I mean, these things matter, and there's no one quick, easy solution. It's about fundamentally disrupting, addressing the issues in our food system from a farm level all the way up. So it's very hard to solve everything perfectly, but we look at, what is the most holistic net positive impact that hits all these points. So, the communities where it's grown, is it going to add value there? Is it going to add value throughout the rest of the supply chain in terms of the impact of shipping it, producing it? Is there going to be a health impact on, the product and the consumers eating it? A positive one. Is it going to be a great culinary experience? At the core of what we do, everything is culinary. I mean, we love food on our team. Everyone does. We care deeply about making sure that people eat good food. But good food is not just something tasting, super delicious because it's full of salt and flavors. It's because it's been sourced in a meaningful way. It's because it's using, quality ingredients that have a story and significance behind them. So we're trying to, again, take these great ingredients that we feel proud about using in our products, and we hope that people will feel proud and good about eating, but making them as accessible as possible, because it's really still not very accessible to eat in this way, and that's a big problem. So that's really what we want to do, is bring good food to the world, and good food doesn't mean just delicious. That's hugely important, but it means it has to tick these other boxes as well.
So Karana is two co-founders, yourself and Blair.
Yeah.
We can get into in a minute or two how you guys sort of came together and how you sort of divide up what you do and how you do it. I know that of the 3 years you guys have been in existence, you, Dan, have been very focused on supply chain sourcing, the raw ingredients. I've had numerous conversations with you where you're either about to go out or have gone out or actually are in situ in Sri Lanka and other places, sourcing great jackfruit, good quality whole jackfruit. You don't just go to a market and buy your ingredients and go make it in a factory or whatever. You guys have built the whole supply chain. Why don't you talk about that just for a moment, so people get an understanding of what you guys have accomplished in the last 3 years, which isn't, as you say, just a delicious product on the table.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we chose jackfruit in the first place because, like I said, I mean, we look at this, sort of in a framework, okay, what are the ingredients that fit our values that we can effectively commercialize? And when we first started this company, I mean, so my background I've spent a lot of time in developing markets throughout my career, a lot in Southeast Asia and some other markets in East and Southern Africa as well. A lot of that work has naturally lent itself more towards agriculture projects. So that gave me a firsthand look at all the negative issues with agriculture and food production, and led a desire to do something, that was different and making a more positive impact. So that's really driven what we've been doing and how we've been focusing on our ingredient selection. And that involves, with a crop like jackfruit that is not always very effectively commercialized, not always processed in the most interesting ways that allow you to do interesting things with it. That means we have to roll up our sleeves and spend a lot of time, on the ground. We spend a lot of time with farmers, understanding, their needs, their issues, how we can deliver more value directly to them, because oftentimes they're getting the shortest end of the stick in things, and they're the ones who really matter at the end of the day. If we want to have enough food to eat in this world, the farmers need to be taken care of and need to be growing things that will allow them to keep producing food in 10, 20 years. So it's very important to us that we do spend a lot of time on site. My background naturally lends itself to that. So but the rest of our team as well. We have Karstens is our chief science officer. So he's run R&D with large organizations in Germany, but he's also spends a lot of time deep in the field. So there's both business, technology, and sustainability elements throughout every piece of our business. And again, we really look at the entire value chain and how we can be as involved and integrated across the entire thing, because ultimately we believe that's how we build value as a company, is by making sure we're engaged with every stakeholder in our ecosystem and making sure that we're delivering value where it's most needed.
How do you want customers to engage with you? Obviously you want them to try your products, but I'm wondering what more can they do in terms of encouraging or engaging or supporting or whatever?
Well, what I want from our customers, obviously I want them to have a great experience. Like, I just want them to eat our products and say, that was really delicious, and hopefully feel better for the food choice they make. Because whether it's with our products or with any other plant-based food product, what I would like for everyone to be doing, because this has been a lot of how I've built my journey. I was a huge carnivore for most of my life. I really did not connect. I've always cared about food, but I did not connect the sustainability piece with my own hedonistic, food desires, which are strong. And that's been a big shift for me over the last several years, but it's been a journey. And then how I've approached it, which I would encourage everyone to do, is just think about every meal as an opportunity, right? Like, we all eat once, twice, 3 times or more a day. Each meal is an opportunity, each time we're consuming something, to think about what has gone into this. How is this grown? Where is it coming from? Just think a little bit more deeply about that. And it's hard. I see this all the time. I've been through this. It's really hard to really know. So we want to try and, as much as possible, and communicate that with our consumers. And again, give people the information where they can make better choices, feel good about making better choices. And I see a lot of products now entering the market that are doing similar things, and I think that's a very good thing.
So if I'm a chef and I want to try your products, are you guys, from a food service perspective, giving them the kind of the jackfruit that's been prepared in certain ways? Jackfruit in the US we can get, right? You can get jackfruit from different sources. So I'm wondering, why would they want to engage with you guys around the ingredient that you're producing? What's different about it? What's unique? Or are you looking more from a restaurant perspective, where they would take the finished dumpling that you've created, or the finished bao, or etc., and they're just expected to serve it to their consumers? How are you hoping to engage with chefs and restaurants?
Sure. Well, there's definitely an opportunity, and we see a lot of interest in the finished products for various, restaurant and food service channels. So that's definitely an opportunity that we're exploring. But really, I think how most chefs interact with our product at this point is getting, again, it's not a raw jackfruit product that we sell. What we do is we take jackfruit and we're not a jackfruit company. We focus very much on jackfruit right now, but again, we make meat from whole plants. So we look for the best possible whole plant ingredients, so ingredients that we do not have to, do massive amounts of processing, that we don't have to strip out nutrients from or denature or do a lot of, intense processing to. The jackfruit we use is really pure jackfruit. It's young, unripe jackfruit, but we work with it in a way we now have 3 patents filed. We have several different ways that we work with the jackfruit in its raw material state, as well as doing various forms of value addition to it. Again, still keeping a very clean, very minimally processed profile, but delivering it to chefs and to consumers in a way where it's just easy to work with. It's intuitive, because jackfruit, like many new ingredients, is intimidating. If you're not willing to put in the time, effort, energy required, it's a beast of an ingredient to work with, whether it's fresh or whether it's coming in some of the readily available formats that you will see in the market. And it's a bit limited what you can do with it in those ways. So for us, really, it's about bridging that connection. Like, I think a lot of people connect jackfruit with pulled pork and pork products, but again, actually getting that result in a kitchen format is not always easy. So we just want to make that as simple and intuitive as possible. So the product formats that we deliver to chefs are really more like in Asia, for instance, we have a shredded pork and a ground pork, that we call it our minced pork in Asia.
With the relevant Asian flavors and so on? Or is
it's delivered.
Yeah, go ahead.
We give it sort of a baseline umami savory profile, but what we haven't done, and this is something that we may change in the future as we expand our ski range, but again, it's a very culinary chef-oriented product. So we didn't want to go over the top with really taking it too distinctly in a certain direction. We want to give it to chefs, because if a chef is buying, pork in the market, again, if you just take a piece of, especially a leaner cut of pork, steam it or fry it in the pan with no salt, no seasoning or anything, it's not going to have, it will have a little bit of a porky taste. But when you think about cooking meat, so much of, what we experience as typical meat flavors come from a bit of marination, a bit of salt, a bit of, augmenting that flavor with a bit of seasoning. That's the nature of food. That's why, we cook our food, we season it. That's something that most species don't do. So again, we want to give a really blank canvas as much as possible to chefs. We don't want, there is sometimes, especially this is more of an issue in Asia, where jackfruit is more traditionally known as a sweet fruit, where sometimes chefs will see or hear jackfruit and think, oh, maybe this needs to go in dessert. So we do want to give it a little bit of a savory profile to reiterate that, yes, there's no question that this is a meat product or meat-oriented product, but we don't go over the top in terms of our flavoring. With the dumplings, that's something that's a bit different, where really that's meant to, replicate a dumpling profile, very distinct, pork and chive or pork and cabbage or gyoza. So that we go a little bit further in terms of replicating that flavor profile.
So from a product, so an end product perspective, you mentioned there are 2, right? There's the product which you will work with restaurateurs around, where you're giving chefs the product that they can then go create the dishes. You mentioned the Michelin chef chap who's in Singapore doing that. You're also potentially bringing plant-based Chinese style or dumplings, etc., to grocery in the US. Do you think there's a significant demand for plant-based Asian style foods? I don't think I've seen Mexican, obviously. I've seen American. I don't think I've seen much in the way of Chinese. I'm thinking it's probably a very underserved ethnic category.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think there's a huge growing interest. If you look at the data, it definitely supports that it is one of the more underserved and fast growing categories. One of the reasons we chose dumplings is because they're such a universal, recognized and loved food format. Pretty much every culture has a dumpling in one form or another. It's just,
they're,
you know, that
they're the Asian burger equivalent, right?
in a way. But I
Like,
think,
no,
I mean, well, I mean, it's
I
we
guess
say
what I'm saying
more.
is
I mean, maybe more of a nugget, because it's like, you know, this sort of mix of some kind of meat or protein, carbs sandwiched together in a tasty, comforting package. You know, whether you take a sandwich, an empanada, a tortellini, a pierogi, a dumpling, what is the you know. Yes, yes, exactly. Like a pie, it's all the same principle, right? It's a pretty tried and true format.
I guess what I'm saying though is, if in the US the burger is the most ubiquitous sort of American food that people are eating huge volumes, you know, in McDonald's and various other places every day, in Asia the dumpling is the sort of go-to.
I would say it's very much up there. Yes, it's a huge category. It's got virtually limitless, you know, ways that chefs can either customize their own or would want a more turnkey, you know, product offering. So absolutely, there's huge opportunities in terms of volume, and again, I mean, it's just such an iconic and universal dish that we knew that it has a lot of significance for both Blair and myself as well. We both grew up eating and loving a lot of dumpling and dim sum. And it's been hard to find a really good plant-based. I mean, you've always had a lot of good veggie dumplings, but a really good, you know, something that replicates that juicy, you know, pork dumpling, pot sticker, gyoza, jiaozi, and whatever you're going to call it. There's so many different names and iterations, but at the end of the day, it's sort of the same satisfying thing. And yes, it's a huge category and huge opportunity, and it's pretty well loved. But I would say, I mean, there's also a huge world beyond just dumplings. There's a lot of similar types of products, similar formats, that we were not limited to that in any way. And we will very much look beyond that at other types of Asian product offerings, but also other cuisines and categories. I mean, we have a very flexible and versatile ingredient that can go into a lot of different formats.
I've got to say, I'm waiting. I'm getting very tired of vegetable lo mein and fried rice, vegetable spring rolls. It's getting really tired.
We have some good new versions for you to try.
Yeah, well, let's get them into, I don't know, P.F. Chang's and various other chains in the US, so that everyone can broaden their consumption. So you mentioned Blair, you mentioned yourself. Blair, how did Blair kind of get into this? What's obviously difficult to tell somebody else's story, but maybe a different way of asking it. How did you guys come together as the co-founders of Karana?
I think at this point, Blair and I are qualified and confident in telling each other's stories, but we're pretty conjoined. But I mean, Blair and I have both similar and different backgrounds. I mean, we've followed, I think, similar paths. We both like to use the term reformed bankers. Blair spent longer in the banking world than I did, but I stayed sort of in the finance consulting sphere. So we've both been on that side of the table, which I think has been helpful in, you know, us bonding and navigating through this process. But we both come at this again from a love of food. I mean, Blair has been a more dedicated vegan. I'm not a vegan. I'm now mostly vegan or plant-based. But Blair has really been. I aim for
hours occasionally. You just sort of.
Yeah, I mean, look, in general, when I'm traveling, if I need to eat something for benchmarking, like I said, for me, it's been a journey. I've gone from being very much probably negative 10% plant-based, you know, a few years ago, to now being well over 90%. And increasingly, I'm in that direction. But I think it's something that everyone needs to, you know, do on their own terms in a way that works for them. Blair is the opposite. Blair has been a very dedicated and committed vegan for a lot of his life. And so, I mean, he really comes at this from a very strong moral position, but we're both very much, you know, geared towards sustainability. We care deeply about environmental issues and you know, trying to make the world a better and more sustainable place through food and agriculture, but appealing to, again, what will win over consumers, making delicious, good food. But we met at a conference, the Clean Meat Symposium in San Francisco a few years ago. and just sort of connected. So Blair is born and raised in Hong Kong. So we've both spent, significant portions of our life in Asia. We had similar overlaps in our career. We were at similar places, and thinking about the way to sort of bridge this, Asia and opportunity with what was some of the trends and what we were seeing happening in the West, the need to move beyond just burgers. So we had a lot in common. We've always, gotten along well, and yeah, it's just grown from there.
And was it Blair or yourself that was previously at another a well-known plant-based company that shall remain nameless?
That was Blair. So yeah, Blair had been dabbling more in the industry. I actually, on my path to sustainable food, I sort of started, I dabbled in insect protein before I moved towards plant-based, and I'm very comfortably and happy committed to the plant-based side of things now. But yeah, Blair always saw that from the beginning.
Got it. And from an entrepreneurial perspective, I'm sure the last 3 years has been interesting, up and down. You've obviously had COVID right in the middle of your kind of 3 years of starting and growing the company. Aside from the pandemic thing, because I think we talk too much about that. Hopefully we can move on from it. What kind of thoughts or advice, if anything, would you give to anyone that's considering starting a company, particularly, for example, if it happens to be in the plant-based space or the alternative protein space? Would it be a screaming, hands in the air, hair on fire, running in the opposite direction, don't do it? Or would you wholeheartedly encourage someone to do it and give them some thoughts on how best to tackle?
No, I would say absolutely do it. Look, I think you can't really have this conversation without, acknowledging the COVID elephant in the room. The world, like we've said, the world has changed fundamentally. And that creates a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities. And I think there has never been a better time to look at starting a company. These create some of the best opportunities for disruption, the need for disruption, for new products, and it's not just products. There's so many opportunities across the entire industry, everything from sourcing, technology around the growing and farming, traceability, data, ancillary services, distribution, marketing. There's huge needs across the entire space, across every area of our food system for disruption. And I would highly encourage anyone who is passionate about that, who is interested in this, to look at it and look at doing things, not just replicating what other people are doing in the space, but to look for new opportunities that are emerging quickly out in this changing world.
Couldn't agree more. The interesting thing is that people can do things at a micro level by, as you say, making a decision with every meal they make, what sort of world they're creating or contributing to or not, based on their consumption patterns. But there's certainly an opportunity within the food space more broadly across multiple sectors, whether that's food tech or data or whatever. But in the plant-based category, you guys, Asian style food is one of the largest, consumption foods consumed in the US. I think if I remember my data, I think aside from American style food, you've got, I think, either Mexican or Italian are the kind of two strongest from a numbers perspective. I think Chinese is up there as well.
I think, when you're talking about a market like America, trying to categorize it into these, this use of the term ethnic category is always for me a bit silly, because America is a makeup of different ethnic foods and categories.
If you categorize the kind of the amount of money that's being spent on Italian style food, Mexican style food, Chinese style food, I think Chinese style food is sort of one of the largest categories. Yet you guys are probably one of the first movers from a plant-based perspective, which just goes to show how much opportunity there is across plant-based.
Absolutely. And even just with, I mean, even going a step further up from there, I mean, just with pork, I mean, if you look at, how many people are going into beef and now chicken, I mean, the coming chicken nugget wars are going to be, the new hype cycle in plant-based. But I mean, how many chicken nuggets do we need in the market? I think just there are so many more open opportunities, and the wider variety of products, of offerings, the wider variety of formats, of flavors, profiles, however you want to sort of carve out a niche. Like, again, we don't view ourselves, I mean, I think because we come from Singapore and have this origin story that we're very proud of, we get grouped into this Asian category a lot, but we're a global food company, and we produce a lot of Asian food products because it's cuisine that we love and know very well, and that our products are very well suited towards. But we will look across the whole range of categories wherever there are these underserviced opportunities. So I agree with you that, Asian food in the US as a category is absolutely one of the fastest growing and one of the most underserviced. And I think it's an area, I mean, I've seen this firsthand, and every time I come back, and because I haven't spent a lot of time in the US the last 10 years, to be honest. But every time I do come back and visit new cities, I'm always amazed by the caliber of authentic Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese, Burmese, really nuanced, Cambodian, nuanced, interesting types of restaurants and cuisines that are available. So definitely the level of interest and sophistication is clearly growing, but that exists across a huge range of categories. In general, I think people are getting more sophisticated and interested in their food and the flavor profiles, the story it's telling. So again, I think just looking across at different opportunities is very important.
I think you've gone through a lot of, I mean, we've been with you guys from early days. You guys have gone through a lot of trials and tribulations in terms of this dedication to sourcing, making sure you're sourcing from specific types of farmers, making sure that they're well taken care of, and so on. How do you grow your product set and your variety of flavors and ingredients while maintaining that commitment to farmers? It's I wouldn't say easy, but you've gone through the pain. You've gone through the pain of doing that for jackfruit. But as you say, you guys are going to go beyond jackfruit. So how do you make sure that you've always got that, taking it back to the farmer level with everything that you do? Because I know it's taken you a lot of pain. Dan, I've seen you go through a lot of pain with this.
It's not easy. It is painful. But again, it's one of our core values, and that's important. I mean, if it wasn't easy, it probably wouldn't be worth doing. And that's true with a lot of things. I mean, just because something is not easy and is painful does not mean that, that's an automatic barrier to doing it. What our hope is, and what we believe firmly, and we've already seen a lot of the results of this, is that putting in that effort and that pain, early on yields results and builds value over a longer period. And that gives us more security in our supply chain. I mean, that has resulted in our ability to manage our supply chain, even with this. I mean, that's been extremely challenging during COVID without being able to travel as freely and go and spend time. But having that involvement, having that understanding has allowed us to really accomplish a lot of things that we probably wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. And having that sort of level of involvement in the supply chain and presence also hedges us against some of the risks that we're seeing across the industry. I mean, if you look at, being more heavily reliant on commodity prices or commodity inputs, that's a crazy space as well right now, being competing with everyone around, a limited supply of very standardized inputs and being solely focused on formulation versus actually having a more proprietary owned supply chain. I'm very happy with where we're sitting right now. So I think it's been well worth it, but it's an ongoing effort. And it's just something that we make sure that we keep at the core of what we do, and we keep in focus, and we hire around that. We, build our team and our culture around that. And we try and pass that on to consumers as much as possible. And I think that's something that consumers and investors recognize and appreciate increasingly.
I agree. the product quality is amazing because of this kind of dedication that you guys have. The fact that you have such a strong supply chain, despite the challenges of COVID, gives you more surety in terms of consistent supply and good quality supply and so on. I hope as the business scales, as you guys bring it to the US, as it sort of takes off, as it inevitably will, because I've tasted it. I know what you guys are actually delivering to the consumer. I hope you can maintain that sort of supply chain commitment to the farmer and so on. I think that'd be amazing. And I know there are a lot of consumers that care about this stuff. Okay, I think we're almost coming up to. I think we've probably gone way beyond, but this is way too interesting. Two kind of very quick questions. One is, how do you, if someone's a restaurateur, if someone's an investor, if someone's but if someone's a consumer, how do you want people to reach out to you, engage with you? Where can they find you? What's a good way of sort of joining the Karana story at this early days?
Sure. Well, the easiest way to follow us right now as we start gearing up for our launch and announce everything and just get a sneak preview of what we're going to be putting out soon is to follow us across all our social media channels. So Eat Karana, EATKARANA. So Instagram, I would say we're most active. LinkedIn, people are very welcome to find me and connect on LinkedIn.
What's your LinkedIn username, Daniel?
I think I'm Daniel Reigler on LinkedIn. I would have to check, but
how do you spell your last name?
Riegler.
So Dan Reigler, Riegler, and you're the co-founder of Karana, Karana.
Yeah. And for any inbound inquiries, I mean, you can email info@eatkarana.com. But we will be making some announcements fairly soon on social media regarding our plans, and we'll make sure that, I mean, that's very likely the first channel where we'll be announcing any of our major updates.
So give me a sort of a range of when I can expect to find Karana somewhere in the United States. And if I have to fly or walk long distances, I probably.
Well, we will be starting in California. So we'll be starting. We've just set up an office space in the Bay Area. So we'll be launching around San Francisco and Southern California as well. So San Francisco and LA and the surrounding areas will be our launch markets for the US. And we're planning to be doing actually some small events and some initial activations as early as September, October. And we'll be looking at having our products available in some restaurants and food service channels going into the end of the year, and likely retail going into, we want to be ready to hit the ground running for Veganuary and give an option to everyone who's coming off the holiday. I think this year will be a much deserved holiday indulgence period. So starting in January, we want to be ready. So
basically, January 2022 is when it'll start popping up in restaurants and other places?
Yeah, and hopefully a bit before that, but on a more limited scale.
Okay. Remind me, there's a restaurant in LA that does a lot of these amazing things, and we know the guys over there very well. We should connect you.
Absolutely. The vegan scene in LA is pretty amazing. I spent 3 months in LA this summer, and yeah, it makes it very easy to be a vegan.
Yeah, Princeton, not so much. Okay, so we've let people know where they can find you, where they can reach out to Karana, whether they're restaurateurs interested in playing with your food. I know you're not supposed to play with your food, but chefs are allowed to do so.
We encourage it. It's fine.
So chefs can reach out. We've told them where. Investors can reach out. We've told them where. Awesome. I should ask, and I'm sure there's a story here, and maybe you've told it to me before, but I'm getting on in years, so I forget things. Karana, where did the name come from?
Yeah, so the name has two meanings. So it comes from a Hindi and Sanskrit word, Karana, which means to do or doing. So one of our core brand values is about, as we mentioned before, taking action, making better choices, taking those steps in our lives. So that's something that's very important to us, and also has, it's the origin of jackfruit is from India. So, a lot of Sanskrit words have translated throughout Southeast Asia. So there's some significance and meaning for us behind that. It also comes from a Balinese phrase, Trahita Karana, which is basically is a kind of, it's about the Balinese way of life, which is about achieving prosperity through balance with nature and spirituality, essentially. So really about this achieving more balance, about being more connected to nature and profiting and being successful, or at least more fulfilled based on that. So that's also something that's very important to us.
Perfect name then.
Yeah.
I can't believe I haven't asked you before.
It's on our website, I'm pretty sure.
I'm pretty sure it is too. All right, Dan, this has been a great session. Thank you. I don't know. This has been really fascinating for me. So I hope people do reach out to you, to Karana, and join in the journey, even if it's just, and I say even, but even if it's just in terms of finding you somewhere and buying you and taking you home and making, as many meals as possible with that balance in one's life that we should all be looking for.
We just want people to enjoy what they eat and feel good about it. I mean, it should be delicious, and it should be something that you're fulfilled after eating in multiple fronts.
Absolutely. So Dan, Maximilian Reigler, thank you for your time. I'm going to press the pause, and then don't go anywhere.
Okay.
Alrighty then. I think I pressed stop. Yes, I pressed stop. So thanks for coming along today and listening to the conversation between Dan, one of the co-founders of Karana, and myself. Thanks for being a listener to the Big Idea podcast focused on food. Again, if you love what we do, if you don't love what we do, please engage, please let us know. It'd be great to get you as a subscriber so that we can update you on more podcasts or YouTube videos as they come. We put this out on both formats. So that's it. Thanks for coming along. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Until next week. Bye.